Just really briefly, you guys have your tea with you?
Yes.
All right, excellent. All right, let's go. All right. Welcome everyone to Let's Talk Over Teas. I am your host, Naija Howard, an author, speaker, empowerment and relationship coach. This is a show specifically designed for single parents. However, tonight, I wanted to take a little bit of a detour. I really wanted to discuss the unrest across America, across the globe, on the George Floyd murder, and give people an opportunity to use this platform to really open up and share what's on their mind. What's going on? And is there room for change? Is it really going to be systematic change? So welcome, join in, and please welcome my guests. My first is Mr. Robert Thomas. How are you, Mr. Robert Thomas? I'm going to introduce you really quickly.
I'm
Mr.
doing
Robert,
good. I'm good.
Excellent, excellent. Mr. Robert Thomas was born in Queens, New York. He went to Bayside High School, graduated Queens College with a BA in political science. He graduated Adelphi University with a master's in secondary education, graduated with Christian education certificate from New York Theological Seminary, and 30 years of teaching in the New York City public school system. He is currently a pastor of the Greater Refuge Church of Christ in South Ozone, Queens. I also want to welcome Mrs. Lauren Magnuson. She is a writer, an editor, and a social justice activist, a graduate student living in Virginia. She still believes in the power of the written word to make a difference in the world, and that the social justice is possible through education and unity. Guys, welcome so much to Let's Talk Over Teas.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, really.
Yes. So you guys have your tea?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. So which teas are you guys drinking?
I'm a green tea person, so that's kind of what I like to go with.
Awesome.
And I had also green tea. I had Acea berry today, green tea with Acea berry in it.
Oh, nice. All right, so today I'm doing organic white tea with mint. Delish, with a little bit of honey, of course.
Of course.
So guys,
yeah,
I want you to feel very comfortable. This is just a conversation. Just imagine it being at your round table at home, and we're having just an intelligent dialogue about what's going on today. So I want to give you the opportunity. I'm going to open up the floor to what's on your mind. What do you want to share?
Ladies first.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, so first of all, thank you again so much for having me here. I feel really honored. So we've worked together on your amazing book, Raising John's Boy, which means so much to me. That's kind of how we met. And so being able to kind of be here and sort of bring this perspective, I feel very honored. So thank you so much. So I just want to say that. But so I think, so before I came on here, I sort of had some of my own thoughts that I wanted to share. And then I talked to a few people that I know who I thought I'd like to get their opinions on. And the dominant thing that I'm hearing from people in my socioeconomic bracket, people, I guess, that look like me in my area, a lot of people are saying we are so aware of what's going on and so kind of aware of the privileges that we have. And that is almost kind of surprised me a little bit. I wasn't expecting to hear overwhelmingly like how much people understood in terms of how they perceive themselves, I guess. So that was really kind of heartening, I guess. But we also kind of, where I live, it's a more kind of activist area. I'm right outside DC. So I think one big thing is that a lot of us, or a lot of white people who want to be allies, like we kind of know and we want to be. But I think a key point that I really sort of wanted to talk about with you is how we're on your side. We want to fight. This is not just kind of a moment or even a glimmer in time. This is a 400-year history here, and the thing that I think I kind of want to get across the most is that we kind of understand, I think, what we're all up against. Like, the systems are so big and have just been around for hundreds of years. And so I think I feel, and also people I know kind of feel, that we know that the odds are kind of stacked against this movement, stacked against justice and injustice, really. And so I think we're so frustrated at the lack of change because we want to be allies, but it feels like that doesn't seem to be enough anymore. Like, we feel like our voices aren't being heard on behalf of people of color. Like, it's almost as if the system is so big and so biased that our white privilege doesn't seem to be enough anymore. It feels like it's not really breaking through, but I'm hoping that's just because we haven't hit the right moment yet, and I'm hoping this is kind of that moment. But so many of us really, really want to see real systemic change, and not even just on the outside change, kind of like renaming streets, which is amazing, and we support that, but we really want to see it in criminal justice reform, in laws. And so I think so many of us really are aware of what's going on, but we feel powerless too, and we know we have privileges, but it's a big system. So that's kind of a big thing I kind of wanted to broach.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I want you to know that I heard that. I heard you. And what it sounds to me like, listen, we're on your we're on your team, we're on your side. We want to see systematic changes, but the bigger conglomerates of this nation that's filled with bias, that's so ingrained in the fabric of this nation, is so deep and so heavy and so wide that you're almost like your voice is as discreet and unheard like ours is.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we get your voice to get bigger? Because it is your white privilege that helps to move things along. Right? How does that even move forward? Right? What are your thoughts, Mr. T?
Well, I appreciate, first of all, I thank you for having me here today. I'm humbled by it. And I want to thank Lauren for her heartfelt the words that she said. I could feel them. I actually felt them. And it is a difficult situation to discuss within the white community. The discussions that are now being had is something that we have in our community all the time. As a parent of a son, the same conversation I had with my son was had with me in dealing with police and how to carry yourself in certain areas, what we would consider white neighborhoods. What type of things do you do when you have encounters with police? So I realized that growing up, that it was different. I was blessed to go to school in an area of Queens called Bay Terrace. And this is in the 1970s. And it was a predominantly, probably 90% white Jewish area. And all of the black kids were bused to the school for the most part. And the kids didn't see color. So as I got there and I realized that I had white friends just as much as I had black friends, at that age, we didn't see color. We saw guys who were guys, girls who were girls. And we didn't realize there was color. But as we got older and as we got into middle school, something happened. And we began to divide. So when we got into middle school, the white kids sat on one section, the black kids sat on another section. And I kind of felt funny because I knew most of the white kids. So I was torn. And that tearing that I felt is something that has been in my life ever since. Because I really did not want to see color, but as I grew older, I realized color was real. It was a problem. It was a problem in this country. And that kind of led me into wanting to study history even more, because growing up in school, I recognized that history in America for Black people was, we came over as slaves, we were slaves, and then Abraham Lincoln freed us, and then there was nothing else until the Civil Rights Movement.
Right.
And I always wondered, like, is that all we are in the United States? And history has taught us that's all we were. So I heard Naja say that it's ingrained. It's what we're teaching now in New York City, the implicit bias. And there are implicit biases in people that they don't even realize, even in Black people, all people have it.
Absolutely.
And the issue is that the implicit bias is actually detrimental to a Black man, I'm gonna use me, a Black man's health, welfare, and even his life. So this moment that we're in right now, it's not just a moment, it's a movement. And it's not just a movement, but it is what I call a revolt, which becomes a revolution to change what's happening in the system. Because change can only come within a system through, and revolution sounds very radical, but this country was founded on revolution.
Absolutely.
So it is ingrained in our history, it is ingrained in the people that we are. All of the immigrants who come here, they have left for a better life to come to the United States. In that itself, that is a revolution. They revolted from the system where they came from. Not that there was anything negative, but they might have felt that they can do better in the United States. And so that's why we see so many people from South America walk thousands of miles to come to the United States, because they feel that they can get a better life. We are now in the midst of a revolution. And what I do like, and I'm gonna stop, but what I do like in this revolution is that we see a generation of young people that all are included in it. It's not one-sided. And I think that is what gives me hope. I don't have grandchildren yet, but when they do come, that is what is going to it's giving me hope to see the activism of our younger generation.
Absolutely. You know, it's so amazing. It's so amazing because I remember how humbled and just filled with emotion when I started looking at the news, and I'm looking at all of my Caucasian allies and Asian allies, and Hispanic allies, and, East Indians and Native Americans standing with us. It is the most beautifulest vision that you could ever breathe as an African American person, because when you've been under the struggle for so long as a people, and it's almost like you're talking to walls. I remember when even my friends and like you, Mr. T, and I call him Mr. T because Mr. T was actually my junior high school instructor. And so I've known this man since I was about 12 years old. And so it's beautiful. And I have much respect for him. And it's amazing because I'm saying to myself, here we are. I'm looking at all our brothers and sisters finally coming to stand up with us. We've been fighting this fight for so long by ourselves. It was almost like we were talking with walls. And so when I had my dear friends who were white, and I have friends from all over the globe, and when my white friends were texting me saying, what could I do? My Asian friends, what could I do? I was like, whoa, this is beautiful. We're not alone anymore, because systematic racism everyone saw it, but no one had the courage to stand with us. No one had the courage to say, you know what, this is wrong, and we're gonna stand with you. And so to see the voices now, I had to leap on this opportunity. When Lauren, when you expressed your sincere humility of wanting to demonstrate and to share how much of an ally you are with the African American Black Lives Movement, I had to give you an opportunity to let your voice be heard, because we don't always hear from our allied Caucasian friends. We just don't hear. It is so important to hear your voice say, I'm angry. Not just our voice. We've been hearing our voice forever. So it's nice to hear everyone else say, this is wrong, this gotta end. But I do want to ask, guys, why now? I mean, we've gone through, Trayvon Martin. We've gone through Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, Ramarley Graham. The list goes on. Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, which was horrific. That was horrific.
Yeah.
Because of a no-knock law, they came into her home and shot her 8 times while she was sleeping.
In the bed, that's right. Well, I if I may, you say why now? I believe it was a perfect storm, if I can use that. We have number 45, who's just, me personally, I think he's out of his mind, but he's out of his mind to a point. Okay. His rhetoric is just outrageous. But then we had the pandemic come. Then we have the economy falling apart. We have people who've been locked up in their homes here in New York, I mean, been 30, 40, 50, 80 days, I think it was somewhere like that.
It's like almost 3 months.
Right. Locked up in their homes. Their life has been turned upside down. Almost 20 million people on unemployment, or even more. And the killing of Breonna Taylor, which didn't get any publicity at first, Ahmaud Arbery, which was in itself, what somebody called a lynching, which was just on video. And then when we saw the George Floyd video,
murder,
I think it just the fire was already lit. The fuse was already there. It just exploded. And when it exploded, it was rage. It was helplessness, and it was a desire to see something change today, not tomorrow, not yesterday, not let's work on it, not let's sit down and we need change today. And again, this generation that we're dealing with, they are a generation that's not willing to wait. And because they're not willing to wait, they want the change immediately. And so you say, why now? It was the perfect storm. And even our white brothers, our young white children or young people, they've grown up in a society that was told, I'm 55 years old. They've grown up in a society that's totally different. The world is right there at their fingertips. The world is so small to them because they can go on their cell phones and see something in Mongolia in real time. Newspapers are dead. Why? Because that was yesterday's news. Who wants yesterday's news? So everything is real time, and because it's real time, we want it instantly. That's my thought.
I absolutely agree. I was kind of going to say something similar about, it was just sort of this confluence of events, like everything all at once. And I think you made such a good point that I hadn't thought of until you said it, which is that everyone had already been kind of cooped up. People had been isolated. And so it's almost like when we saw these new videos, we had to get out. I mean, so yeah, I wonder if that's part of it. I think what is coming from the White House, I think, has over the past few years has also just triggered so many wounds that we knew were still unhealed and that are still open, but he just divided so much that we started just seeing all of these cracks open up. And so yeah, I totally agree. I really think it's a little bit of everything. So
absolutely, absolutely. So again, for those who are just tuning in, we're having a great discussion right now, intelligent dialogue with Mr. Robert Thomas, a 30-year veteran in the New York City public school system. He is also my junior high school teacher. And also Miss Lauren McNewson, who is an editor and social justice activist. We are having a great discussion on the George Floyd movement, not just across America, but globally, and how this is impacting just everyday lives. And, you know, how are we finally breaking the silence between an African-American man and a white woman and having them sit at a table and really hash out and have an intelligent dialogue about how they feel about these moments that are now playing out in the media, hashing out. And so, you know, I do want to also bring up the fact that, you know, as someone who has been a community activist for almost 20 years myself, a member of National Action Network, I've seen Reverend Al Sharpton do some amazing work lately, really leading the protests, making sure people are getting out there. You know, today I seen him on with Governor Cuomo, and, you know, again, this is a man who's been doing what he's been doing for over 30 years, you know, marching forever, you know, and I've seen him march forever, and making change. Today was a very pivotal point in history because legislative and Cuomo signed a bill today for police reform, and which is putting a ban on chokehold. Which is so necessary for us to finally have. And they're also discussing, I know de Blasio was talking about defunding the police and taking some of the funds from this $6 billion industry and transferring it over to social services and other areas that will be more feasible for the uninvested communities, you know, of urban areas, you know, be it education and social services. So how do you guys feel about that? I know 60% of Americans are disagreeing with the defunding of the NYPD. So how do you guys feel about that?
For me, I totally, completely support it. I think that's where we need to go because so many things have been promised. We've experimented, not necessarily well, and it's just we need radical change because it's shown that the police aren't good at policing themselves, and it's not working. And I think at a certain point, I think I completely support it, and I think reinvesting or diverting and then reinvesting into communities, I think, is the way that we take charge of our lives ourselves. I think it gives people more power, and maybe that's why, you know, police are resistant to it, because it does empower people that have been, you know, oppressed for so long. And I get that that's scary for people in power, but it just has to be done. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I'm very supportive of it.
Yeah.
You know, the word, and it's wordplay, because when you hear the word defund, you immediately feel that they're going to take away the police and anarchy is going to happen. And I think that if those who are in power would use the proper terminology and lay it out the way Nigel just said, which is we're taking resources from one area and putting those resources in other areas that are needed in the communities. To take money from the the police to fund other agencies, that mental health agencies, and agencies such as that, the homeless situation, housing situations, even just clean streets,
Absolutely.
broken windows, to go and rehab old buildings, things of that nature add to the I'll say the unity of the community. But what is happening is that in urban communities, police actually police the community. They do not serve and protect, they police the community. So it's those who live in those communities feel that they're an occupying force. And they don't feel the same about police that people do in the neighborhood in which I live, where they love the police, because the police are not occupying us. They're not on the corner pushing the kids off, because the kids are not on the corner. There are things for them to do. So if you could take, and in New York City, I don't know what the number of billions of dollars it is in New York City, but I know for a fact the New York City Police Department is like a mini United States Army.
Mm-hmm.
I've always told the students in New York City in my classes, when they say, "Oh, I'm a Blood," or "I'm a Crip," we the biggest and we the baddest gang. I said, "No, you're not. The baddest gang in New York City is the New York City Police Department." And I always say it in this term. I said, those guys got tanks and helicopters, and you're not going to outgun those guys if it really comes down to it. So there has to be first proper termination of the uses of language, so that it won't give the thought that we're going to have anarchy in the streets. That's number one. Then we have to come up with a plan. There has to be a plan. And again, that means that elected officials have to do work.
Absolutely.
They have to get out into the community and listen to what people have to say.
Absolutely.
I heard someone say something, and I don't want to overstate this, but when you call the police and you have a mental issue, the police shouldn't be coming to a mental issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
it's going to go from 0 to 100.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And people are calling the police for every situation,
Right.
and they don't know how to handle every situation. I believe, and I believe one of the schools just signed a bill, and I think it was the Department of Education. They just signed a bill to not have the police come to their rescue every time some kind of a situation happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we really need to. It's not about, completely eradicating the New York City Police Department. That doesn't even make sense. That doesn't even make logical sense. We need law and order.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that, do you need to have NYPD come in for every situation, whether it be in education and mental health? I mean, no, they don't have to come in for every situation, and what happened to peace officers? Why can't we have, officers that come in and, act as mediators? And, what's wrong with having that, and let law enforcement come in? Because listen, it's called enforcement, right? Law enforcement. So they're there to enforce the law. They're there to unfortunately force it on you, so we got to bring that aspect of it down. When I saw that video, and I want you guys to tell me internally how that made you feel when you saw it. When I saw that video with George Floyd, and I'm watching this monster have his knee on his neck and his hands in his pocket, and he had this bravado about him, almost like, and he's looking square at the camera like, yeah, you see me. If this wasn't a clear indication of just modern day slavery, I don't know what is. That was a clear indication. And then we wonder why so many of our African American men are having psychological issues because of what they're witnessing and what they've seen and undergone, and even in their own life. You know, I don't know any men of color who has not had some kind of interaction with law enforcement. You know, even if it's just this much, it's almost like they comb every household, and it's unfortunate. And so we as the females of the home, we're crying, right? Because the African American man is the, you know, not only is he the patriarch of our families, right? But he's also part of our racial survival.
Yeah.
You know, and so you know, when you kill off the man, you know, that's our families, you know, being broken up. And then society turns around and says there's no men in the home. Yeah, because you're killing them. Or you're locking them up in mass incarceration, or you're beating them so bad to a pulp that now they have mental health issues like post-traumatic slave syndrome, which is like from Joy DeGruy, who talks about that all the time. So, I mean, we really have to narrow down some real systematic changes. You know, when all of this dies down, in your heart of hearts, do you believe it's going to change? What's going to happen? What's next?
Well, you know, I struggle with that question, and I think I actually kind of thought you might ask that, and I kind of in the back of my head was hoping I'd have a really good answer. I think there's no doubt that there has been visual change. So like with the Confederate statues coming down all over the country and in the South, which I think is an incredible form of nonviolent protest. You're not hurting a small business, you're not hurting people, and it's something for people to do that doesn't hurt others, and it makes a real change. And I could kind of go on about that for a while, but I mean, so I think there will be some change. To what extent that is, I don't know, and I was hoping to be more eloquent. I was hoping to have this, you know, amazing answer to this, but I think the election in November will be helpful in terms of seeing where we're going to go, because I think that's what it is. I think that's why I'm a little hung up on it, because we have this huge thing happening in November that's going to really kind of make or break things. And I think if 45 becomes, I guess, 46 or something.
Please don't put that in the universe. Please don't put that in the universe.
I know, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, so I think if we have a Democrat versus a Republican in office, I think that's going to dictate a lot. So I think it's kind of hard for me to look beyond November, because I just feel like that is gonna, and if Trump is reelected, I'm not, then I think that's just gonna really, this could continue. We could even see even more kind of amazing protests that really are seeking for change. And I don't know, I feel like November just kind of is going to be that thing.
You two things. You asked how did we feel, right? But I want to address something that Lauren said, like, what do we do, or how will we feel? I feel as a history teacher, we must stay positive. Yeah. Despite the negativity that we will see, what we will hear, you have to stay positive, because if you don't stay positive, you'll give up.
Yeah.
And if you give up, everyone gives up with you. So you have to continue. You mentioned Reverend Sharpley. It's more like 40 years he's been marching, and you just have to keep, you know, what you say, when is enough enough? How many marches are you going to do? Well, I'm going to keep marching until we see change. You have to not give up. You have to keep going. You have to stay positive. Now, one of the things, and it's hard for me as a I consume history. I mean, I consume it. In particular, United States history. I don't like to use the word American because there's a North, a South, and Central America. And this country is so full of itself that we call ourselves American, but somebody in Canada is an American, somebody in Central America is an American. So
Right.
I tell the students we are citizens of the United States. So I'm consumed with United States history. And so when I saw Mr. Floyd being murdered, and hearing him cry out, and in particular when he called for his mother, it just pierced my soul. And then I began to think about all of the slaves who were coming in the slave ships who didn't get here from Africa, between Africa, the coast of Africa, to the Americas, that didn't make it. How many millions, not thousands, but millions, who were thrown overboard. And I felt like he was one of those who was being thrown overboard. And one of the movies that I can't show to the students because it's so graphic, but one of the movies that like pierces my soul is, oh boy, it just slipped my mind. It just slipped my mind just that quick.
Amistad?
Amistad, thank you. You're in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Amistad. And the scene when they're on the slave ships, that just, I mean, it just, that's what I thought of when I saw the video for the first time of Mr. Floyd. And it just, I said, oh my God, the millions of people who were thrown overboard, that was him. And so that feeling of sadness is so overwhelming. But then when you come to yourself, you have to say, I have to stay positive. We've got to keep it going for my children, for my children's children, for my neighbors, for your children, that they will understand how man is so flawed in himself, and that flaw is so powerful that it can control a whole system to keep people down because of the color of their skin. But I said this to my son recently, that your skin is not a defect. Your skin is able to effect change, but you have to be willing to make the sacrifice. And I think somewhere along the line in the Black community, in the last, and there's so many reasons why. I mean, we could spend a week talking about it, but there's so many reasons why there's been systematic efforts to destroy in our communities those who are trying to get us to a better path. If you get what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. One of the things I encourage you both, if you don't, read the story of the Black Panthers. Mm-hmm. And it started out so positive, but because of their positivity and making such an impact, the government itself went against them. Yep. To destroy them from within. So let me just stop and just say, we got to stay positive. We can't give up.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a great way to stay optimistic, and we got to stay optimistic, right? We can't think that it's not going to happen. You know, faith and fear are pretty much the same, except they work in opposite directions.
Right.
And so we have to maintain our faith that this is going to change. Yeah. And every little bit helps. Every step that we take is a step towards change. And I mean, listen, 1960s, it was Dr. King, you know, who was marching and you know, making waves. And here we are, unfortunately, many years later talking about it, but at least now the conversation is on everybody's tongue. At least now we can say, wow, we're moving forward. We're doing this, we're fighting. And you know, I was reading where they were saying how, and Lauren, I think you had hit on it, that they're knocking down all the Confederate statues and all the slave masters statues across the nation. And I mean, I've seen it in London and England and British and in Virginia, and and they're even talking about New York, the Christopher Columbus over in
Yes.
Washington Square Park. And I think they had well over 5,000 petitions hoping that they can knock it down. De Blasio is against it. Do you guys think that that is something that we should actually continue to do? And because all we're doing is perpetuating the lie of which this country was established on, or should we just keep it and forget that it, the reality of it?
So I feel so, I think, strongly about this in the sense of bringing them down. I think they show one side of a immense, complicated story, and I think it's this kind of oversimplification of history, and they just represent genocide and slavery and things that, these wounds that with them still standing there, these wounds cannot completely heal. And I don't believe that, just tearing down a monument is going to bring, the legal reforms and criminal justice reform that we need. But I think, and I don't want to project, but I feel like a person of color walking underneath these statues or by them, I frankly can't fathom what it must be like to walk past a statue of someone who owned slaves. Like that, to me, I just can't believe that we force people to do that every day. And so I'm very much for kind of bringing down monuments that are really just valorizing, Confederates or slave owners. So I'm very much for that, and I very much work in historical memory. That's what I kind of want to do my master's thesis on. And so I think it's also important to be cognizant that all sites are kind of not created equal. So for example, in the South, plantation homes are, a huge tourist attraction. And some of them deal with enslaved history so well, and some of them do not at all. And so I think it's important, because some of my friends of color are saying, like, we want to take down the plantations too. And I completely get that instinct, and I'm kind of with them on that. But then there's also a part of me that thinks sometimes these institutions do such a good job of talking about that history. Really just quick example, at Middleton Place in Charleston, they actually have an annual event where descendants of slaves all gather at Middleton Place, and they have this amazing family reunion at Middleton Place. And so that's a way of bringing communities together when once they were so separated and torn apart. So I think, and I'm preaching to the choir, I'm sure, but being able to kind of decide which history to
keep and which to,
right.
Yeah.
So I'm just, so overall, very much pro statues coming down, but also kind of everyone thinking critically about other aspects, for sure.
Well, real quick, symbols are very powerful, and those statues represent symbols that are very powerful. Now, one of the things, and again, this is just me being me, I've always questioned the Confederate Army were Confederates against the United States, and they're the only group of people that has come against the United States as a country, but they're still celebrated. You understand? We don't celebrate Nazis. We don't celebrate the Spanish-American War, the Spanish who were fighting against Americans. We don't celebrate the French when they had the French-American War. So, but the Confederate Army, the Confederates, the South is celebrated. And it is a symbol of of it. You know, it says to me as a black man, it was okay. Those people were okay. We know that they came against us, but they were okay. But it can't be okay. The Civil War was fought over slavery. You know, we've been told a lie that it was states' rights, but it was slavery. And so those symbols mean something. This country is so symbol happy, you know. We expect our president to be a certain way, and
Right.
he lays the wreath. I always laugh when I say he lays the wreath on the unknown soldier, and he never touches the wreath. They never touch the wreath. The soldier does it, but they say the president does it. It's a symbol. So that symbol, or those symbols of Confederate sympathizers and Confederate generals, is a slap in the face to African American people, to people who believe in true freedom. It's a slap in the face. So they should come down. Absolutely. And it's not revisionist history, it is true. And the truth sometimes is the hardest thing to accept. I always say this, we all have family secrets. We may not know them, but somebody in the family knows them. And we try not to talk about those family secrets, but they are there. And our country's secrets are out in the open. And because they're out in the open, you have those who still try to act as if they're not there, but they're smack dab in our face. And so we see the results of those secrets because we see here in 2020, 155 years after slavery ended, we're still fighting the same fight from 155 years ago. Right. So again, we have to stay positive. And I just said stay positive, fear and faith. We have to continue to fight this battle. And even tonight, this dialogue tonight is the way we fight.
That's right. Right.
I don't know who'll see this, but this can be an impetus for somebody to say, you know what, I want to do what those three just did tonight and have open dialogue. You have to be able to talk back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it got to be intelligent dialogue.
Yeah.
We got to get past the anger dialogue. I think we have come to a place where we can finally have this conversation, and I think we can have this conversation now because speaking as a woman of color, a Black woman, it was never easy to have a real dialogue with a white person.
Right.
You had real dialogue. We have to. It's imperative in our skin that we have real conversations at our dinner table. Otherwise, we end up in trouble. So we have to have real conversations growing up in people of color households. You have to know where to go, which communities to go down, which areas to go, come home at certain times. We have to follow rules and regulations, unfortunately, and we learn these as children. Because we know that once we leave outdoors, there's people out there who doesn't mean us well. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be mindful of that. Mm-hmm. I do want to acknowledge the statues, though. I have to say, I'm so in favor of knocking down the statues. However, these are our histories, right? This is American history. And what I feel, and this is just my opinion, is that I don't want people to forget the richness in the Black history by tearing down memories that actually reminds us of just how much of a lie this country was built on. Yeah. And I say that because the only way, to me, we should be doing it is, instead of highlighting just Christopher Columbus, we should also be highlighting the Native Americans and the African Americans who fought and built this country. So if you're going to put up Columbus, put up an African American too, or a Native American, but let's not, destroy, like I know, Lauren, you are a historian as well, and you take such fabulous photos of what you do in the South. Removing even the plantation homes, I think that takes away from a wealth of information that the new generation of young people need to be privy to. Because until they actually change the history books and start to tell the truth, and I'm hoping that this movement with George Floyd, actually, I'm hoping someone says, hey, we're wiping out all of the old, history books, and we are redesigning them, and we're getting all the Black historians, all the Native American historians, and really telling the truth of what happened. And I know that we are going into phase 1 now, and they're just now opening up, New York City again for education and so forth. And they're going to have, de Blasio is giving some parents an opportunity to, do virtual teaching still. But, he's hoping everyone goes back to the buildings, the actual schooling. But my hope is that, with that being said, teach these children the real history of America, because America, the United States of America, was built on the backs of Black people, Black slaves, and we need to share the absolute truth. And I think when we get to that place where we can have truth, then we can be bygones and we could be friends, and now we could talk, because now you're honoring me and giving me my recognition, and you're acknowledging me, and you are honoring the shoulders that I stand on. That, this country, we have to be grateful. Black people have such a rich history, but if no one shares it or tells it, then you'll never know. You'll never know. So as we come to a close, I do want to say, are there any last minute words before we share our information? Did you guys bring anything new to bring to the table? Do you guys bring anything new that to the table?
Well,
No?
I'll say not necessarily anything new, and I'll say this because
That we can learn.
Yeah, well, you learn every day. Let me just
Absolutely.
You're going to learn every day. But what you just said about the symbols and the things of that nature, one of the things I believe that we have to do is encourage, in particular in the northern areas of the United States, is to visit the South, Virginia, North, South Carolina, Mississippi, Arkansas, those areas that were heavy into slavery, and during those areas that had segregation. There are pockets, as I travel through this country, you don't need a museum.
That's right.
There are still relics of slavery. There are still relics of the fight for desegregation all throughout this country. And the information is out there. This right here, this phone, the internet has opened up a wealth of information that is out there for us to be able to research, search, and see it for ourselves. I believe you said Lauren is a photographer as well and taking pictures. That stuff, you've got to eat that up. I consume that so much, and I'm so glad that I'm close to retirement, because one of my life on my bucket list is to travel throughout this country, to just get the information that is out here. There's so much that I don't know that I want to know. So when you say new, there's something new every day for us to learn, but we've got to be willing to want to go out and learn. I'm done.
Absolutely.
That was a beautiful answer. I'm right there with you. Yeah, and I really, in terms of kind of, I love what you said about traveling to kind of the South and seeing kind of, I guess, history in action and how it continues to play. And I guess I would just kind of completely agree with that, while also maybe encouraging listeners to think about maybe exploring some small towns in the South. I'm assuming that it's safe to do so, because I know there are some places where maybe it might not be safe, but getting to small towns, talking to people, and obviously, and really kind of trying to find those sites of reckoning, and trying to find sites where we can make radical change while also bringing people together. But That was a beautiful answer. I couldn't have said it better. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. And hopefully we don't take away books. You know, books is everything. I mean, you know, if our young people can still just enjoy the smell of opening up books. I know that Google is there, and of course you know, technology in our phones are there, and everybody wants things very fast. But you know, Lauren, you're in such a beautiful setting. I think it's so important to have, you know, books and just being able to open up, you know, just a wealth of information right there at a library. So I did want to share some new information tonight I brought in. Who was the first African American to receive the National Medal of Technology?
Ooh.
Was it Frederick M. Jones or Lloyd A. Hall?
You stumped me on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. It was Frederick M. Jones. He actually passed away in 1991. He was in the National Hall of Fame, and he actually created the Thermo King. He was co-founder of the Thermo King and refrigeration. He's the one. He's the one who was created the refrigeration to make it cold. So you know, he saved our perishable items.
Yes, he did.
So I just wanted to share that information tonight so we can have just more information. There's so much more wealth of Black history outside from, you know, Dr. King and Malcolm X and you know, Rosa Parks. We have a wealth of information of people who have transitioned that we just don't know about. So I am rooting for new history books in this day and age. I'm hoping that we can get some, you know, African American and Native American historians to really come together and create real history books for our American children. But before we go, I do want to just acknowledge, and I think, Lauren, you said you had one of these great guys right here.
I do.
Yes, yes. So this is, huh?
It's in the other room, but I have it, and it is beautiful.
Awesome,
both
awesome.
on the surface and inside.
Yeah, say again?
Both on the surface and on the inside. It's beautiful.
Oh, fabulous. I love it. So this is my book, Raising John's Boy. It is a book specifically designed for single mothers who are raising their sons. It is a wonderful guide to help their African-American sons grow into strong, productive, powerful, and peaceful young men. And so in this day and age, I know that, you know, we are in a space where, you know, it's like the tip of an iceberg. We're really tipping into a space of real, true friendship. You know, we can really open up that space of dialogue at the table with someone who doesn't look like us and have real conversation. So I want to thank Mr. Robert Thomas for being here today. And I want to thank Miss Lauren Magnuson for being here today on Let's Talk Over Teas. You guys have been absolutely amazing. Thank you for just being transparent, opening up, sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your opinion, your thoughts, and just making the world a better place. So thank you, and I hope to see you guys. Subscribe, like, and watch us on the next show of Let's Talk Over Teas. Bye.
Thank you so much.